Over the next 3.5 hours, we will learn together about ways to enhance your Reach Out and Read program, including ways to connect with parents, how to incorporate books from birth, and how books can act as windows and mirrors to help encourage positive racial identity development in kids. To get us started, we have a few virtual housekeeping tips. This meeting is being recorded and will be available later for viewing on our website. Please remember to mute yourself when speakers are talking. You will be able to ask questions via audio at the end of each presentation. If you have a question during a presentation, you can use the chat box, which is accessed via moving to the bottom of your Zoom screen. There's a little chat icon that's circled, and you can just type your responses into there. I see some people are using it, so that's great. Please be aware that any messages in the chat box are available to all attendees. If you're using audio today, or if you're using your phone today for audio, you can mute and unmute yourself by using *6 and *9 to raise your hand. If you're not using your phone for audio, you can also raise your hand via the computer, and you do that by clicking on participants, click on chat, and then click select or click raise hand. And then the hand icon should become visible and we'll be notified. We really hope this doesn't happen, but if you do have technical difficulties with Zoom today, our colleague Naomi Colwald is standing by. Amber is posting her email and phone number into the chat box right now, and she'd be more than willing to help with any questions that you have. We have a digital conference program this year, and you should have received it via email. Amber is also going to post a link to the chat in the chat box to that on our website. To save time, we are only going to be doing short introductions of speakers as their full bios are available in the conference program. We hope you find this year's speakers to be relevant and timely, and that you engage with speakers and others by using the chat feature. We're also going to do polls throughout the morning, and we're going to go ahead and do a practice poll right now. So I have just launched our first poll, and you should see a box appear in the middle of your screen. And the question is just your best guess. Since 2010, when Reach Out and Read Wisconsin was launched, how many books have participating clinics across the state given to children? So there's a couple options. Pick the best option below that you think. I'm just going to give everyone a few seconds. Got some good results coming in. Okay, I'm going to go ahead and close the poll and share the results. So it looks like most people pick C, and actually the correct answer is D. It is over 1 million books since 2010, which is awesome. Okay. So we also want to hear how you are feeling about this digital virtual environment today. And so we are asking everyone to treat this like it's an in-person meeting and ask questions and be present as your schedule allows. So what do you feel like you can commit to doing today to contribute to our discussion? Do you feel that you can ask direct questions of speakers? You can share your own personal experiences. You'll participate via the chat, but not out loud. Or sorry, today is just kind of a crazy day. You won't be able to chat, but you'll be listening as time allows. And so just please pick one answer. I'm just gonna give everyone a few more seconds. I can see some more results coming in. All right, I'm gonna end this poll and sharing the results. So it looks like we have a really good mix. A lot of people feel really confident using the chat, which is great. So know that all of our staff is standing by to help assist you get your questions answered, or if you have comments, we'll get those to the speakers. Okay. Okay, the other way we're gonna try and make this fun and interactive is with drawings and giveaways. So our first one, we have a new t-shirt this year, and we are gonna give 10 lucky winners a new t-shirt. So if you can bear with me for just a second as I reshare my screen, we have kind of a fun way to do this. So last night, all the attendees that were registered were assigned a random number between 1 and 75 because that's how many participants we have. And so we're just going to spin this wheel. A random number is going to come up, and then Amber has a registration list, and that corresponds with the name of each participant. So she'll announce the name and then put the name in the chat box. So for our first t-shirt, the winner is number 2.
So number 2 is Jennifer Lee.
Oh, awesome. All right, for t-shirt number 2, number 75.
Tamara Shortress.
Awesome.
Yay!
Woohoo. Okay, third t-shirt.
Sorry.
Okay.
Valerie Hay.
Oh, congrats, Dr. Hay. Okay, t-shirt number 4. Number 60.
Elsa Rojas. Yay!
All right, t-shirt number 5. Number 51.
Kathy Hernandez. A lot of 16th Street.
Congratulations.
Yes, and just so everyone knows, we're going to mail the t-shirts out to all the winners using your address via Eventbrite. So those will come in the next couple weeks. All right, this is t-shirt number 6, I think, right? This is 42.
Anna Beerer? Anna Beerer? Sorry if I ruined your name, but I'll put it in the chat box too.
All right, t-shirt number 7.
Mary Beth Johnson.
Okay. Awesome. All right, t-shirt number 8. Number 9.
Christine Potraz.
Awesome. All right, we got 2 more to go. Number 8.
Deb Greiner.
Oh, yay, Deb. Awesome. All right, for the last one. Number 15.
Anna Montoya.
Oh, great. Okay, awesome. So stay tuned. We are going to have more of those throughout the day. Hopefully it was just kind of a fun way to get us started. I'm just going to go back to my PowerPoint here. So we really just want to say thank you to everyone for taking time to be here today, to all the clinics that are participating. The work that you're doing is invaluable, especially right now, and thank you to all the members in the community that support them and offer assistance so that they can help children and families across the state. We're going to move on to our first speaker of the morning, which is Reach Out Read Wisconsin Medical Director, Dr. Dipesh Navsaria. He has been our founding medical director and serving in that role since 2010. He's a pediatrician, occasional children's librarian, educator, public health professional, and child health advocate. He is a tireless champion of our work, and our success and growth would not be possible without his leadership. Welcome, Dipesh.
Thank you so much, Alex, and thank you to, first of all, to the team for putting this entire meeting together. It's as I think many of you are well aware, it is not easy to virtualize conferences, and even with the Lever Society's experience in doing so over the last 6 months on a pretty broad scale. I think we've all been in virtual meetings that have gone fairly poorly. I was in one just a couple of days ago where you would think that they had never done this, and despite the fact that it seems to happen, that it actually happens every 2 weeks. So you know, this is an interesting time for everyone, and I think how so much of the initial pandemic was essentially a responding just to the shock of really the societal disruption that we were facing, and a lot of questions about what this pandemic means for all of us, for our patients, for our families, for our coworkers, for ourselves, for our own families, and for the things that we would like to be able to do, the things we need to do, and so on. We've learned a lot more about the SARS-CoV-2 virus over the months and have a lot more information, a lot more data. There's certainly some troubling things. Rates are going up in many parts of the country, and sadly, this is one of those times where I don't want Wisconsin to be like, even close to #1 on a map. We are facing this in our state, and most of you are very well aware of that, right? Because you're dealing with this, you're watching the numbers, you're seeing this play out in your communities, and it worries me a little, quite frankly, to hear us talking again, or actually not just talking, but reopening surge facilities in our state and so on, because we've had the time to prepare and to adjust. What's been apparent to me, though, is that even at the lowest summer ebbs that we've had in this pandemic, is that families and children are not spared the effects of the virus, even if they themselves are not infected by it. Right, the disruption that we've seen has been immense, and one of the, I think we can call it a positive, in at least in a grander scheme, longer term way of thinking about things, is that things that have mattered about children and that have mattered about families that I think we largely have just taken for granted have suddenly been pushed into people's consciousness in a big way. Case in point, early childhood education. Early childhood educators, unfortunately, don't get more than lip service from most people in terms of budgets, support, attention, and so on. I think there's many people who understand and value what people do in early childhood education. But at the same time, we also know that the funding simply isn't there, the support, the encouragement, and so on. And when we suddenly went into safer at home and so on, suddenly it was okay, fine, most children have parents and they can stay at home and so on, but what happens when those parents need to work? And suddenly this whole notion we had of essential workers, you started realizing how many people are actually essential. There's a lot of people that are essential. There's a lot of parents that are essential. And suddenly we were in this world of, wait a minute, what do we do about children whose parents do have to work? And where's the support for them? And questions about their risk and so on. Other questions have come up. How are children affected by not being in early childhood settings? How are they affected by not being in school? How are they affected by not being able to socialize to the extent that they might like? We've seen all sorts of interesting questions. I never realized how many people out there are actually secret child development experts, given the number of opinions that one can hear about this. Some people who never had opinions about this before. There's also a lot of interest in things like, to a certain extent, we've heard from scientists who study facial recognition and facial cues and interaction. Um, they're a little surprised, I mean, gratified in many ways, but a little surprised by how many people are suddenly interested in this whole question of how much being able to see a full face matters to kids' development. Because of worries that, wait a minute, are we going to affect development when children can't see full faces for potentially big chunks of the day and so on? The answer, by the way, is of course no one has a carefully controlled trial, but basically almost no one seems to think this is actually a deep concern based on other research that's out there, as well as longstanding mask experience in parts of the world like East Asia, where mask wearing is much more common. But right, does all of us a recognition of, wait a minute, children's brains matter, children's development matters, families matter, and what happens within those families matter. And this again is the heart of what we do in Reach Out and Read. Because at the very outset of this pandemic, I heard a few things from people saying, how can we even be giving out books, right? Aren't we going to potentially be transmitting infection? And of course, we've since learned that spread on books and other objects does not seem to be a significant factor. It's not a zero, but it doesn't seem to be the primary way. How can we're doing virtual visits. How can we give a book through the screen? Well, you don't, because here's the thing, that we all, I hope, know that we are not merely a book giveaway program. If we were a book giveaway program and that's all we did, I would even argue we shouldn't even be having an annual meeting. You don't need a medical director. We would basically be in the shipping business, and that would be about it. But the magic of Reach Out and Read is that we're secretly a parenting support program, right? This is the part that it actually took me a number of years to recognize, because we didn't talk about it that way. We're now much better at helping people recognize and articulating the fact that we are a program that supports what parents do and that engages with parents in all the body of work that's been out there around coaching, around modeling, around home visiting programs and their efficacy. We recognize that Reach Out and Read is a version of all that. It sits atop that. We just didn't talk about it that way early in the history of Reach Out and Read in enough so that people recognize that. And I'm proud to say at National Center, within really only about 4 weeks, we created a video on doing telehealth, Reach Out and Read through telehealth. The script was written, the parents and children were found, and the entire thing was recorded, by the way, with everyone in their own homes, right? If you haven't watched the telehealth video, we'll put the link in the chat box if one of my colleagues has a chance to grab that, and please do. It's a great video because the producing of it was, I thought really awesome. I mean, 4 weeks all at home, high quality video, really came out great. Number two, it's one of the first times we were able to build in little stops. Thank you, Alex, for putting that in there. Little stops to explain, look and see what's happening. Look at what was just said. Look at what's about to happen, right? And help guide your thinking around this interaction. And really help people recognize, yes, the book is important. Of course it is, but it's not the single thing. It's not the whole thing, right? That we matter, our families matter, and the work we do of listening, of watching, and of connecting matters. And that's the message that I think that we've really been trying to get out there to so many people, that they're worrying, why would you bring a child into the clinic at time like this when there's infection raging everywhere and so on. Well, actually, how can we afford not to? How can we afford not to connect with families? Because more than that positive nasopharyngeal swab PCR test, many more people are fearful, they're anxious, they're worried, they're under economic stress, they don't know what the future is going to hold, and they need help, they need connection. And Reach Out and Read, I think, really helps provide a way to start talking, to start connecting, even amidst all that. The other thing that's been going on, of course, is it's always been there, but I think it's much more in our consciousness now, is the key issues in our society around racial justice. Again, it's not that they suddenly appeared this year. They've always been there, but we're talking about it more, and we're connecting about it more, and we're putting a greater importance on that. And I'm proud to say that Reach Out and Read nationally has had a fairly strong global worldview, really, about the importance of diversity in children's literature, about the importance of representation, and so on. But honestly, it wasn't enough, right? And we've already begun making all sorts of changes and moves to say we need to make sure we're getting this right because this is too important for us not to get right, and to support and help people in the journeys that they may be taking in terms of looking at their own work, their own practice, their own thinking, their own connections with families in new ways or in ways that they may not have thought about before. I think this highlights how nimble we are as an organization, not just as a state affiliate, but really nationally, to help really respond, mirror, and anticipate what we're seeing societally. It's sort of the public health view of what we do one-on-one with families individually, right? That we're trying to say, hey, world, what's your concerns? We want to help make sure that we're being part of that solution and being a net benefit in so many ways. And I will say this whole idea of parenting support is getting a lot of notice, even outside healthcare proper. Um, the Pediatric Supporting Parents Initiative, which I've been involved with for the last couple of years, which is a big bet by 6 large funders to try to articulate what is it that primary care can use, can really try to think about in terms of connecting with parents and families in a better way. And of the 68 programs that they initially looked at, they found 13 that were exemplars. Um, evidence-based, scalability, quality, assurance, all those sorts of things. And one of those 13 is Reach Out and Read. Um, and of the 13, there's some that are much more intensive that you may be familiar with: Video Interaction Project, TMW Well Baby, Centering Parenting, Healthy Steps, et cetera, et cetera. But I would argue that Reach Out and Read is the one that is the most implementable with the least investment, right, of dollars and effort and all. Obviously, it takes some investment, it takes training, it takes time, it takes effort, but I would argue that it's the one that you can also scale and that you can bring easily and then think, okay, what else? What else do we need for families that maybe need a little bit more? So a lot of what we have incorporated in Reach Out and Read is really kind of coming out there in so many ways. So I think that this is a time when people say, again, and I haven't really heard this recently, but I heard it not so long ago, right? Oh, why are we thinking about books and reading and all that stuff at a time like this? And the response really should be, how can we not? How can we not provide something essential to families that gets right at the heart of the anxiety that they're feeling and this need to connect in so many different ways, and this need to feel I am doing the work I need to with my child in order to help support their development, to support their well-being in so many ways. So this is I think, we talk about returning to normal. When will that happen? I would submit to you that, yeah, we want to return to normal, but I don't think we want to return to normal. I think we want a better normal, right? We want a normal where all these things that I've just discussed are not kind of kept in a little box and that you only hear about them occasionally or in very certain places, that this is something we should be thinking about in our society in general. And bigger issues of policy come out of this too. How are we supporting early childhood educators and helping them be successful and well equipped to do what they do? What are we doing around parental leave? I mean, my goodness, healthcare, we're terrible about coming to work sick. This is the first time I've never had, that people haven't been throwing shade at their colleagues in healthcare for showing up to work, not showing up to work if they have a cold. Um, you know, um, we're, I think, recognizing the importance of so many different things, so many different elements about how we are as people. And I will also say that what we're doing right now is another element of recognizing the work of parenting, the role of parenting, and the fact that parenting is sometimes invisible in the fields that we have. I wrote a column back in July, uh, musing on the phenomenon, and I personally think the delight of having waggy dog tails appear in the background of Zoom windows, and children occasionally running through. One of my Roar colleagues, I remember early on, it's like her daughter showed up and she's just braiding hair, while talking to us, and so on. And suddenly, the fact that so many of us have families that have lives, maybe we don't have young children, maybe we don't have children at all, whatever, but that we have different worlds that are not just our work selves, I think is an important recognition and realization. And I think that ultimately is one of the benefits that this pandemic might bring upon us, is appreciating and recognizing that, and then saying, how do we well support that? So this is the way I've been thinking about Reach Out and Read and what we do and how it fits into the context of all this. And I'm so pleased that we have amazing, awesome friends and speakers lined up for to speak this morning to help us kind of delve into many of these elements and share their expertise with us. So we will talk again. I will talk again with you a little bit later in the morning, but I'd like to move on to our keynote presenter, Dr. Robert Needleman. Dr. Needleman is at Metro Health in Cleveland. I thought one of the best ways I ever heard him introduced, we were in a Reach Out and Read medical director meeting, and we were all in our circle with the chairs in some, room in a conference center somewhere, and we're going around, and he, does what Dr. Needleman does. He says, "Hi, I'm Robert. I do developmental behavioral pediatrics. I'm in Cleveland, and I do some education and with different learners and all." And he just kind of stops there. And our national medical director, Perry Class, leans forward and says, "Also, Reach Out and Read. He thought of it." Robert is one of the founders of Reach Out and Read. This is his brainchild. And, every time he speaks, he brings a new way of thinking about Reach Out and Read, but not just Reach Out and Read, but thinking about families, thinking about children, and thinking about the work we do and how we can do it better. I'm fully convinced that he dreams new ways to think about engaging productively with families, and then brings it to share with us. So I'm so pleased to have him as our keynote speaker today. Robert, I'll let you take it away. Thank you for being here.
Completely delighted. I hope you can all hear me. Thank you, Dipesh, for getting us started in such a brilliant way. I'm just writing these things like, oh my God, he's just talking, but it all is so sensible and clear and comprehensive and warm, and oh yay, what an inspiration. Thank you, thank you. And I'm so pleased to be here in Wisconsin, which is like, one of those models for us nationally as a, well-run and dynamic Reach Out and Read state. So it's a great joy to be here with you guys. Now I'm going to share my screen, My one anxiety today is that I'm going to go over my time, and I promise I won't do that because that's like the worst thing one can do. And I think we'll just sort of take it away from exactly where Depeche left us, which is thinking about reach out and read and how we can do it better. So the title for the talk for today is a new strategy for engaging with parents. That's a bit presumptive. It certainly has been new to me. It may be something that you guys have been doing all along. In my thinking, it was really inspired by Alan Mendelssohn's work with Video Interaction Project, where they show so many good things that are possible with time and brilliant intervention. And I'm thinking to myself, well, we have a very scalable program. How much of that can we actually do? So my new strategy I've come to call Model, Observe, Coach. For those of us in the medical field, we know that, you know, MOC, maintenance of certification, is something that we always worry about. Model, Observe, Coach. And I want to start by asking two questions. What really is reading aloud? And how can we best promote it? And I have no conflicts of interest to disclose. So goals for the talk: by 10:15, the idea is that you'll be able to critically interrogate your own practice of literacy promotion and identify opportunities for improvement. That you'll be able to use more interactive questions in the trainings that you give, and that you'll be able or think about using cell phone videos to enhance your practice, training, and personal growth. All right, so starting here, we all know this: reading aloud is the single most important activity for building the knowledge required for eventual success in reading. This was a statement made by the National Institute of Education in 1985. It was echoed by the International Reading Association and NACE in 1988, and it's been true for the past forever, right? And in my little schoolhouse, we have the foundations being motivation, language, and attention, all things that early exposure to reading aloud builds. So for my first interactive bid, what I'm hoping we'll be able to do is a word cloud for you guys to enter your definition of reading aloud. What is reading aloud? So take a minute to enter in your definition of reading aloud. And I think Alex is going to help us do this.
Yes, so Amber is going to post a link in the chat box to a website. So if you're full screen in Zoom, you're going to have to escape that and open a web browser because this is an interactive activity. And we want to hear what you think when you hear reading aloud. What does that mean to you? And then as results come in, we should be able to see them on this screen.
And Alex, if this works, you get extra brownie points, and everybody who does this. And by the way, I loved the music at the beginning of the conference, and I just think, like all of Wisconsin Reach Out and Read, it's really classy. It was great.
Thank you. Yeah, this is our first time doing a word cloud, so.
Okay, breaking new ground. Let's see if it works.
Oh, here we go. Got some responses already.
Somebody can figure it out.
It's fun to watch it kind of go all over the screen. It's animated.
Oh, this is really interesting and really helpful too. So I guess that the terms that get said more get bigger. This is great. All right. Alex, is that it?
I think that's it.
Okay. I'm going to go back to me, if I can. All right. All right, so that was our word cloud. I thought that was really interesting to see. Here was my definition. No. All right, what is reading aloud? It is, this is a definition now, an emotionally positive, verbally rich interaction with a book that involves playing, pointing, labeling, dialogic reading, storytelling, and sometimes reading the words in the book. That was my definition. And I think a lot of those elements were reflected. So in thinking developmentally, we always think about pyramids, and this is my developmental pyramid for reading aloud. And it calls out the idea that at the foundation, there is emotional connection and shared attention, two elements of parent-child interaction, which are sort of foundational for anything to happen, any learning to happen. And that on top of that is built a rich language exchange. And then as children get a little bit older, they begin to pay attention more and more to the print in the context of the pictures, in the context of the story. And then finally, maybe at age 3 or 4, they begin to notice the elements of the story, the beginning, the middle, and the end. But as with many developmental things, the more advanced features, elements of the story, are built on top of the ones that come before, and all of them are important. And you could put ages to these things, so that for infants, emotional connection and shared attention are really the main thing. But then very soon thereafter, rich language exchange becomes more and more important. And it's maybe, age 1 to 2 when children are starting to scribble, that print comes into play, and then stories more and more. We'll come back to that. So the question that leads me to is, are we able, in the context of pediatric primary care, to judge the quality of reading aloud? And some of the things that we might try to judge are emotional tone, whether there's shared attention, joy, body contact, eye contact, the verbal content, whether it's interactive, whether there's rich language, whether the words are melodic or more flat in tone, and then judging whether we see specific techniques, shared use of the object, the book, the ability to recover attention when the child's attention flags, optimal pacing, dialogic techniques, which are really just different ways of eliciting the child's contribution, and attention to print. So all of these things might be observed. And in fact, I've been working over the last few years with my colleagues to see, could we actually observe them, and could we rate them reliably? Would we have inter-rater reliability for these features? And in fact, we have reasonably good inter-rater reliability, which I think gives us the opportunity to train around looking at these things, and also to use them. Thinking about quality, we always talk about dialogic reading. So I want to remind people of some of the elements of dialogic reading which are relevant. So we use this PEER acronym for prompts, prompting the child to say something about the book, like, what does the dog say? For evaluating the child's response, that's right, a dog says woof woof. For expanding the child's response, yeah, and the cat says meow. And for repeating the prompt, what does a cow say, and doing that interactively. And again, think back on the video that you just saw, and how much of this did you see? And dialogic reading also has this lovely acronym for people who like acronyms, different kinds of prompts. They're crowd pleasers, I think, of them. C, completion. I do not like green eggs. And recall prompts. What do you remember about that? Open-ended questions, what's going on here? Questions about where, what, when, and why. And distancing, comparing to the real world. So you have a doggy too. What does your doggy like to do? So think about peer and okay, so in the interest of time, I think I'm going to skip past the second word cloud, although it would be really fun, but I realize I'm going to run out of time if I don't do that. But think about, for yourselves, what elements of dialogic reading this father was able to incorporate into his reading, and what it took from the doctor to inspire that. You know, at the beginning of that reading aloud episode, it was really pretty bad. And that little boy really didn't want to have anything to do with it. But after a model from the pediatrician, things changed quite dramatically. So one of the things that led me to question was, what is it that we really do when we do literacy promotion in primary care? And I had 14 doctors at my Metro Health site very bravely agreed to be videotaped. We videotaped 64 visits. And this is what we observed. Lots and lots of questions about literacy in more than 70% of visits. Lots of advice about how to read aloud. Lots of advice on the benefits of reading aloud, why it's good for you. Relatively little, 30-some% modeling of reading aloud, even though that may be very effective. And very little, less than 20%, actually observing parents reading aloud. So in my mind, this constitutes sort of an opportunity for doing things maybe a little bit better. One of the things that we did with this study is we transcribed the videos. And this is the first interaction that we videoed and transcribed. And I'm just going to read it to you because, again, it's another way of thinking about what we're actually saying. Doctor, do you read to him? Patient, sometimes at nighttime I do, probably not as much as I should. Doctor, I mean, yeah, like really try every day. I mean, bedtime is a great time and it's nice time to get them sleepy. Patient, yeah, it's hard because he just wants to pull the book out of my hands and I'm like, stop that. Doctor, and don't worry about reading because at this age, they're not going to sit through a story. Going through and pointing out pictures. I remember going through it with my kids and it would be like this lightning fast, just like trying to get through it and like trying to point out some pictures out, but kind of make it a habit, even if he's just looks at it and holds it on his own. Patient, okay. So when we did the whole analysis, what we found is that there was a lot of telling going on from the doctors, but also very often missed opportunities to reassure parents about what they're really concerned about, and not a lot of eliciting of questions or comments from the parents themselves. So in response to that first study, we did a second one where we encouraged the doctors now to do observation and feedback, to ask the parents to read or look at books with their children in the clinic for a few minutes, and then to give them some feedback, thinking, okay, if we coach doctors in doing this, what will happen? So they still gave a lot of advice. Year 2 is our observation feedback year. Year 1 is our baseline. They still did relatively little modeling, but of course they did much more observation and feedback. They listened to what we had to say. And what happened? When we called parents a couple weeks after the visit, the unprompted recall that there had been literacy promotion as part of the visit went way up. Parents were also much more likely to endorse this statement: I should do a better job at reading aloud. I'm not sure I'm doing it right. So normally it's not our goal in primary care to make parents feel unsure about themselves, but here we had done a very good job of making parents feel unsure about their abilities to read aloud because we'd watched them do it. And then also something that went way up after we did observation and feedback: I would like more guidance from my child's doctor about reading aloud. So parents were certainly open to hearing from us. So I wasn't very happy with this result because of making parents feel so uncertain. And so we've been working on, over the past couple of years, this model that we call Model, Observe, Coach. So the first thing that we do, of course, in primary care is we elicit the concerns of the parents, because if we don't listen to that, then nothing will happen. But then the second thing we do is we model 20 seconds or so of eliciting the child's best interaction, trying to see what we can do with the child that will get the child really engaged. We then observe, okay, let's see how Johnny responds when you do it, and pass the book back to the parent. And then we coach. Oh, this is what you did well, or try. So the last thing that I want to mention in my comments is I've been working on the idea of enhancing the training that we do on the computer using interactive computer-based quizzes that are open-ended, self-scored, and formative. So I want to try this with you guys and see what you think. All right, so here's the question. Here is a pyramid which describes key ways in which reading aloud promotes child development at different ages. For each age, write 1 or 2 words to describe the most important thing children get from reading aloud. And in this case, you would write in, and so for yourself, just take a piece of paper and write down a word or two for S1, S2, S3, and S4. What are the words that fill that pyramid? And of course, you'll remember that I gave you my own suggestions for that. And then as part of the interactive quiz, give yourself a score if you got it right. For the first level, emotional connection, warmth, security, love, shared enjoyment, anything like that, give yourself a point. For level 2, stratum 2, rich language, stimulation, words, give yourself a point. Level 3, print knowledge, print conventions, letters, letter sound connections, give yourself a point. And level 4, stories with plot, character, beginning, middle, end, story conventions, give yourself a point. And then total them up. And put your points that you totaled. Oh, I don't know, maybe you don't want to do this. I was going to say put it in the chat box, but we'll see. No, you don't have to do it because it's not, I don't want to embarrass anybody. But put in the chat box a number. How useful was this question to you? Did it teach you anything? That would be very useful. Or was it just sort of a rote exercise? Not so useful. This is for my purposes to understand whether this sort of question is useful. Alex, on the chat box, what kind of responses are we getting?
Oh, yeah, we're getting a few, and all of them are 3s so far. So that's awesome.
All right, well, that's interesting. Okay, and I want people to be quite frank about this. Like, no, not so interesting. Let me move on to a couple of other questions. All right, here's dialogic reading. This is another knowledge question. List 4 elements of dialogic reading that make it especially benefit. And here's a hint. There's an acronym involved.
There is.
Okay, so we just did this. Now think through the acronym and write your 4 elements of dialogic reading. This is from an educational principle that says that if you say something to somebody, they're likely to forget it. But if you say it twice, they're more likely to understand it and get it. And if you say it and you ask them to regurgitate it, they might be more likely to remember then. And I hate acronyms, so I'm very bad at remembering acronyms. But give yourself a point for each one of these you got. And again, I'm not going to ask people to report their point values. Nobody needs to fess up, but you know how you did. And I'm hoping that that was a useful exercise. All right, extra credit if you mentioned any of these crowd pleaser prompts: completions, recall, open-ended questions, where, what, when, why, or distancing. Knowing about dialogic reading, of course, informs the literacy promotion that we do because it's part of what we're telling parents is useful for them to do. All right. An open-ended question. In a basic Roar visit with a healthy infant, what is the second element of the visit? And for extra credit, what would you do next? Take a second and write in the second element of the visit. Think about what the first element always is. And for extra credit, what would you do next? Okay. So score 1 point for any of these second elements. The first element, of course, is asking about parents' concerns. But second, hand the child a picture book. Model reading aloud. Observe the parent and child reading aloud together, especially when you walk into the room, they're doing it. Ask an open-ended question about reading aloud. Not, do you read to him, or not tell the parent about the importance of reading aloud. So one of the points that I'm trying to make is that what we often do, giving advice, reading aloud is important, or asking yes, no question, do you read to Johnny, may not be the best use of our time. Give yourself a point for any of those that you gave. Extra credit for any of these. Model reading aloud, observing the parent-child, asking an open-ended question, teaching or demonstrating a specific skill, praising the parent or child. Write down 4 specific things or 5 specific things, not just like this was really nice, but what did you observe? And then give yourself a point for any of these things that you might have observed, or anything else that you think was really important. Note the last one, close physical connection. All right. So a very different interaction than ones that I've been showing you, but not that uncommon in clinical practice. And here you can record your observations. Here were the ones that I saw. Low vocal inflections, low energy, passive, avoidant, inattentive, not very engaged, physically distant, disengaged, or connected. What would you say to the mom in this last vignette? If you were the clinician and you watched this interaction, what would your response be and why? Take some time, but because we're out of time, I'm going to rush ahead. You might model. Let's see if I can get him to be interested. Maybe he's a child who, even with your best intention, you can't capture. What would you do? What do you do with child's name, Johnny, that makes you feel happy? This is a very loaded question to ask of a parent who may have depression. Often when you ask that question of a parent with depression, they look at you like you've just punched them in the stomach, and they often begin to cry. It's very tough because, of course, the answer is nothing. Nothing makes me happy. And that is, in my mind, an emergency, right? That's as much of an emergency when a parent can't answer this question as the child coming in with a fever. And then what about explaining the importance of reading aloud and urging the mom to do it every day? Well, if this is what the mom thinks reading aloud is, then telling her to do it every day is a really bad idea. So if that was your answer, take a point away from yourself.
Wow.
Okay. So these are the takeaways for my talk, and I'm going to stop and hopefully have a little bit of time for conversation. Literacy promotion is hard, and we can all get better at it. Certainly, I've been feeling that way for a long time. Get some MOC, model, observe, and coach. Play with it. See how it feels. Talk with your colleagues about it. Speaking of coaching, you know what coaches do? Study the video, just like football coaches study video. Study the video. Listen to yourself. It's scary to have yourself videoed, and it's horrible to listen to what you say to patients, and it really, really helps. And then teach by example. Videos are a really good way of teaching. Teach interactively, asking open-ended questions, and engaging your learners in self-reflection, which is what I've hoped that I was able to do today. And now I'm going to stop. And Alex, if you'll tell me what's in the chat box, people put your comments, critiques, questions, and we'll take it for a few minutes.
And I'll just break in here and say thank you so much, Robert, for that enlightening presentation. You know, it reminds me of two things. One, that, you know, after we're done with training, most of us don't ever really have a chance to be observed, whether it's through a recording or someone in the room. And, you know, it's threatening, right? Like, you know, we don't like that because it makes us feel anxious and all, but you know, it's also how we do improvement, and being in a supportive environment where people are willing to give you feedback is important. I once had the opportunity to go to a clinic at their request and follow them around and just play fly on the wall and help them for a morning, just to be there, coach them and reach out and read and give them feedback. And it was a marvel for me, not just from a you know, observation perspective, but also just being able to just watch these interactions. So I think there's so much value that is there. We have a number of questions flowing in here. I'm going to take one from earlier. The pyramid that you had set up with those different strata, somebody asked what the numbers in the left-hand column were. Were those the ages? I think they were.
Those were the ages. And, you know, like all of the developmental stuff with Reach Out and Read, it's not evidence-based. It's just what we know. I just, you know, sort of made it up. Yeah. And they roughly correspond to sort of, you know, infancy, later infancy, toddler, and preschool. Preschool kids learn a lot from stories. Infants, much less from stories, but a lot from emotional tone and verbal interactions, physical interactions.
Great. There's some kudos and thanks for sharing and enjoying the video examples. I think people found those very helpful. There's a couple of questions. So one, is there a link to these videos? Do you have these in a shareable format?
I don't, in part because I didn't get parents' permission to distribute. I only got parents' permission to show. So unfortunately, you guys are going to have to come up with your own videos. Which is a lot easier than you think. Just, you know, turn on your cell phone and ask parents, and actually having videos of the people in your own clinics is also, you know, something really, really beneficial. But these ones are not for further dissemination.
And and that feeds into the another pair of questions about how do you go about getting video done when you work for a big group? Are there HIPAA issues, etc.? Could you address whether that's come up and how you've addressed that?
Oh yeah. So if you're just doing videos for the use of that patient, and sometimes we'll just video and then, you know, send it to the patient. As long as you don't keep a copy of it, I don't know what the lawyers say, but I've not been concerned about that. The parents give me permission and I send it to them. So that's a do-it-yourself sort of video interaction project like Alan Mendelsohn does. We just send the video to parents. If you're keeping it for the purposes of teaching, we have a signed release of information form that says basically, I give permission for this to be used for teaching. And we're clear with parents to say that we're not going to be disseminating it or putting it up on the web where anybody in the world can see. We're just going to use it in certain circumstances like this one as teaching. So that's what I've done. And the lawyers have been totally comfortable with that. And then, you know, in some cases, we're using the videos for research. And then there's a separate informed consent that includes the, you know, informed consent to get the video, and there are protections about that so that those videos don't get shown without parents' permission. So it's just common sense.
And I'll add that most institutions, legal departments already have photo releases and things like that. It would likely be a modification of that language if they do feel that you need something written, even if you're using it quote unquote just for teaching and so on. It'd be a pretty straightforward release, I'd imagine. I'll take one last question here. Would peer-to-peer role-playing work for this as well?
Oh, yes. And it's great fun. I cut that part out of this talk because of time, but very often we'll do a peer-to-peer role play where one of the participants, say a resident, plays the mom, and one of the participants plays the doctor, and sometimes we have one of the participants play the kid. So we have 3 residents, say, in the front of the room, and we give them a scenario. You are a 18-month-old baby who is highly distractible. And if you want to really put your clinic director on the spot, you can have the scenario be quite difficult. You are a 18-month-old baby who's highly distractible, and the mother is, say, low literacy skills, or very tentative, or depressed. And then you can play out that scenario. And when I've done that in front of a group with 3 learners as the role players, I'm very careful to say to the group that your job is to find positive things to say about the interaction that you see. You're not allowed to say anything negative. You only can say positive, because it takes a lot of guts to sit in front of your colleagues and do this. But the learning is extremely valuable.
Sure, sure. Great. Robert, I could listen to you talk about the interactions between parents, children, and healthcare providers all day, but we are out of time. Thank you so much. We'll clearly have to have you come back to further some of these things in other settings, but thank you again. And I'm sure everyone out there is clapping in their private locations wherever they are.
Good.
And I'll turn it back over to Alex for something brief before we go to a break. Thank you.
Thanks,
Great.
Dinesh.
Yes. Thank you, Dr. Needleman. That was awesome. So right before we go to a break, we're going to do another drawing using the virtual raffle wheel. This drawing is actually for a classic parenting book that Dr. Needleman has edited extensively. It's called Dr. Spock's Baby in Child Care, and we're giving away 10 copies of this just to celebrate 10 years. So Amber, can you let me know if you're ready to, all good? Okay, here we go. Okay, number 67.
Rhonda Hanneman.
And we did remove everyone from the first drawing, so hopefully new people win this time if I did it right.
Okay, Diane Belling. Yay.
Awesome. All right, number 5.
Maria Metke.
Awesome. Okay, so the 4th copy of Dr. Spock. Number 20.
Elizabeth Timmons.
Okay. And book number 5 is going to go to number 61.
Monique Jindal, who is one of our speakers. Is that?
All right, numbers. Oh, sorry, the 6th book goes to number 25. Getting my numbers confused.
1 second. Shannon Rip.
All right, got a few more. Number 34.
Amber Blaska.
Okay. Number 23.
Nicole Smith.
All right, 2 more books.
Oh, Nicole.
Number 44.
Renelle Myers.
Oh, yay, Renelle. All right, so the last one. Number 24.
Kristen Rhonda.
Awesome. Okay, so we will mail those out to everyone in the next few weeks. But right now we're going to go to a break. So please turn off your cameras, take a minute Deep breath, everything. We're gonna come back at 10:28, so we have about 9 minutes. So see everybody then. Okay, it is 10:28, so we're just gonna start kind of coming back. We have a poll question for everyone to kind of kick off our next presentation, which will be about backing books up to birth. And so the question is, assuming that books are available, when would you prefer to give the first book as part of the Reach Out and Read program? So just as you're coming back on, if you could just answer which one you would prefer. We're going to take about 30 seconds. Just leave this open, and then we'll turn it over to our project manager, Karen Mahoney. I'm seeing a lot of good results come in. I'm just going to give us 5 more seconds with this. It looks like most people have answered. All right, I'm going to go ahead and close the poll. And Karen, let me know if you can see the results. Great. All right.
Good morning, everyone. It is my distinct pleasure to introduce our next speaker, Dr. Mariana Glusman, the medical director of Reach Out and Read Illinois, but she's so much more. Please read her bio. I first met Mariana, I think back in 2013-14, when she was the keynote speaker at that year's, our annual meeting. She doesn't know this, but since that time, through our national network, I've taken every opportunity to cross paths with her, and I often reach out to her with questions on Spanish translation. I'm always learning things from Mariana, and I just feel better whenever it is that we interact. I imagine her patients do too. And I'm constantly inspired by the passion that she brings to her practice of pediatrics and the respect and caring she provides her patients and families. I hope you are equally inspired today by her presentation on how we can increase our support to parents of newborns and infants. Take it away, Mariana.
All right, thank you, Karen. It is always a pleasure for me to cross paths with you. It really is. So the feeling is absolutely mutual. So today I'm going to be talking about books beginning at birth and why starting Reach Out and Read early matters, and how to do it in a way that is empowering and helpful for parents. Next slide, please. So next slide.
So sorry, it's just taking a little extra time.
No worries. Maybe should I upload mine? Is that easier?
Yeah, I'm so, oh, there we go. Okay.
Okay, because I'm going to go pretty quickly through some of my slides. Basically, I'm going to talk about why it's important, how to do it, and then I want to touch on some early research findings. And it's still very early, so there's not a lot of research out there. Reach Out and Read has typically started at 6 months of age, and that is a reflection of the developmental ability of a 6-month-old to do something with the book, to sit on the parent's lap and allow us for a teachable moment. But there's been programs that have been doing Reach Out and Read from birth for a very long time, so it's not something as new as it may sound. But there's some really good reasons why starting earlier could be helpful. One is that it stresses the importance of the message. If you're talking about talking and reading and singing and playing in the same breath, in the same spiel that you're giving your talk about breastfeeding and peeing and pooping and when to call your doctor, those are really important messages that parents are really listening for. So this must be, reading and talking and singing must be among those really important messages. It also adds 3 or 4 more touch points to our visits and the times that we can reinforce that message. And we know that earlier intervention has more impact than later intervention in general. Next slide. Also, there's new evidence, although it's not that new, it's about a decade old now, but every day there's new evidence on the mounting importance of those first 6 months. It's a critical window when the interactions with parents can be particularly important for brain and language development. Also, we're really beginning to emphasize more the importance of relational health and establishing those family routines, nurturing relationships. So getting in at the ground floor before any routines are set, it's also something that can be helpful. And finally, this is an empowering message for parents. A lot of times in those early visits, there's just so much worry. They'll come with the apps about how many times they peed and how many times they pooped, and they ate for 15 minutes each side on each breast, and there's just a lot of stress. And sometimes people wonder and worry that giving them a book will add more stress, but it really depends on how you do it. This is really about empowering message, and an empowering message of helping parents and giving them something positive to do with their child. It's not an extra thing, it's something that can add joy. And this is particularly, I think, important right now in this time of the pandemic, when parents are feeling so isolated, when they're all by themselves in their nuclear family without being able to see grandparents or extended family members. Next slide. So that's a really quick why, but so I want to really focus on the how, because it's really important. And I think what Robert said about, telling people that they should read 15 minutes a day with a newborn or with a 6-month-old or even with a 3-year-old, it really isn't helpful. You have to do it in the right way so that it's going to be something that the parents leave your office wanting to do. So next slide. And the key is that the general message is that right from the beginning, babies are listening, looking, and learning. So find and enjoy. That the key is enjoying those everyday moments when you can talk, read, sing, and play together with your baby. Next slide. Other messages that you can give are, talk and sing and read as much as you can. Your baby loves your voice. The more you talk, the more your baby will learn. Here's a book that you can share with your baby. Looking at pictures together will give you lots of things to talk about or more words to talk about. But I'll give you some examples of exactly how to do this in a moment. So the next slide, because the key, and this is Reach Out and Read 101, it's about the teachable moments, right? When you give that book to the 6-month-old and the baby puts the book in their mouth, and then the parents gets upset, and you can say, no, that's exactly what they're supposed to do, using the book as a tool for evaluating development. This is something that is basic to Reach Out and Read. But when you give a book to a newborn or a 2-month-old, they're not going to do anything with the book, right? So that is not the teachable moment. The teachable moment we found is better in the physical exam. And really, that's a really great time to do some modeling of child-directed speech. And when you give the book, if you give a book, can really depend on the visit flow. And the point is explicitly stating why you're doing it and how it's important. So next slide. So how do you model? You're probably doing this already when you're doing your physical exam, because a lot of this comes naturally to a lot of us, but it doesn't always come naturally to a lot of parents. Asking lots of questions and giving the little bit of a pause, waiting for the parent to answer, using that sing-songy motherese that kind of waves, up and down in pitch, pointing to the baby's body parts, telling them how cute they are. I mean, there's just so many things that we do instinctively. But so this is nothing new, but the key is that when you're doing it, showing the parents how the baby is responding, how it's an interaction, and explaining why it's important, and that they can do it too, anytime and anywhere. Next slide. So in terms of books, I think that there's a variety of books, and sometimes it doesn't even matter what the book is, especially early on, because you don't want the parent to be overwhelmed. Really early on, like little nursery rhymes are great because the parents can remember the nursery rhymes, and then even if they don't have the book, they can do the nursery rhymes on their own. High contrast books, babies will get really they pay a lot of attention to that. Baby faces, we all know babies love baby faces. And it's a time opportunity to kind of talk about the emotions and how babies mimic your face. Tactile books for those older kids that are already patting. There's the Tug at Your Heartstrings books that still make me cry, like On the Day You Were Born. I still cry every time I read that book, but just it's a really emotional thing that parents love to read. And then there's books that have more anticipatory guidance focus, like some of John Hutton's books or my book, that really have more, also on top of the book, more parental guidance. Next slide. So sometimes parents worry that giving a book is going to come in between that beautiful face-to-face interaction that that really we want for parents and their little infants. But I want to show you a video. This is part of a Read, Shine, and Read national video of Anna Miller-Fitzwater and how she teaches parents how to look at the book and show the book with the baby.
Can everybody see the YouTube screen? Good. Okay, thank you.
Some parents, it comes naturally to talk about their family, where they're from, tell them stories of childhood. Other parents, like myself, I didn't know what to say to a baby. So I used the book as a prompt to know how to talk to my baby. And it flowed naturally. But really, whatever way works best for the parent is what I hope they do. There is no right way to share language with your baby.
Around 6 weeks, they start smiling and responding to your talk, and they have more visual cues. So this is the right time to look for the smiles and giggles when you read a book.
So one thing that is unusual in using a book in these early ages is that it can be really awkward to know how to hold a book and read to a baby. So I like to teach parents just how to do that. So I have my baby here. This is Bryn. And if I'm going to read a book to Bryn, I want to make sure that she can see my face when I'm reading the book. If I'm going to use this book, I may have Bryn just like this, and I have the book here, and she's looking right at me. Other ways you could hold babies, just on your lap like this, and then you can hold the book under your face like this. Or they can sit in a boppy or in a chair supported. This is also a great thing for older siblings to do with younger siblings too. Just make sure that the baby can see the parent's face. It may be that you read a book one day and the next day you sing songs. It may be that one day, your baby is calmer than another. So using song to calm babies down, and then just reading. Just make sure that you're interacting with the baby. She's seeing your face, she's hearing your voice, and as she grows, you can have more of a back and forth. You'll see her respond more. She'll smile at you, you smile back. That's the way she's really going to learn, is right there with you.
That's perfect. Thank you. So Anna does an amazing job. So let's go to the next slide.
Sorry, there seems to be just a little bit delay when I reshare the PowerPoint.
No worries.
Apologize about that.
All right. So I gave you sort of an overview of the kinds of messages that you can give to parents, but I wanted to just go quickly over each of the visits and just pull out some specific things that you might try to say. And it'll all depend on, as you do this more, you get more the hang of it and what works for you. So next slide, please. So the newborns, parents are excited, they're scared, they're worried. Again, they bring you their apps with the exact number of P's that the baby did in the past 24 hours. They're sleep deprived. A lot of times it's hard for them to take in more information. But the baby also is sleeping a lot more. Although they may not look like they're doing a lot, they are responding. They calm when the parents talk. They're responsive to auditory stimuli. And Bright Futures basically says that we should be talking about singing and talking and reading with the baby and creating some nurturing routines. Next slide. So it is a busy visit, and you may not have time to talk about everything, but the key is really beginning to do that model. Again, like Robert said, it's not about telling parents what they should do. It's about showing parents what they can do. So here's an example. Imagine that I have the baby right here. Well, let's put them in an exam table right there, and the parents are over there. So I might say something like, I'm examining the baby, listening to their heart. I check their belly, and the baby starts crying, and I'll be like, oh, I'm so sorry. Are my hands cold? Oh, that's so rude. My hands are always cold. And then when the baby calms down a little bit, look over to the parent and say, oh, did you see how she just calmed down so beautifully with that when we talked with her? Have you noticed she's doing that? That is fantastic. And then, you know, look at the baby. What are they looking at? Are you looking at a light? What is so interesting about that light? And then you consider tell the parents something like, you can have conversations with your baby, although it can feel awkward at first because they're not saying any words. She's actually communicating with her actions. So you can pay attention to those cues and respond. And these types of back and forth conversations really will help her brain grow. So that's an example of something I might say with a newborn. And again, it's about not telling people, but acting it out and showing it. Next slide. And acknowledging that this is not an easy thing. It doesn't always come naturally. Next slide. So at 1 month, the parents are a little bit more relaxed, still some sleep deprivation, but the babies are beginning maybe to smile a little bit, becoming a little bit more interactive. And so, and this is what Bright Futures basically talks about, cuddling and calming baby with talking and starting some tummy time. Next slide. And at this visit, you can really take advantage of the fact that the baby's more interactive and more alert to point out that they're making eye contact, maybe that if you show them a book, that they're actually looking at pictures. A lot of times parents think it's very funny when I look at the baby and I'll say something like, we got to have a conversation, you and me, you know, and just making light of it. It's not something that has to be stressful. Let's see. And if you think that a baby, a 1 month old doesn't really look at books, this is 1 month old Taji. And I swear to you, I took those pictures. This is not just that I just caught that second where he was looking. He was really actively looking at the different pictures in the book. And this mom, before I gave her the book, was actually quite depressed. And you can see as I asked her to look at the pictures that she really lit up and relaxed and is actually having a good time with it. Next slide. So at 2 months, the babies are now smiling and beginning to coo, and they're getting more and more interactive. And so it becomes easier to talk about these kinds of things. The parents are a little bit more rested. And Bright Futures, again, continues with the emphasis on holding and cuddling and talking and developing schedules for naps and nighttime routines. So we're already supposed to be talking about these things. So the book is something that can easily be introduced in that context. Next slide. So at this visit, it's busier because, of course, with the vaccines, but I like to really have fun pointing out what the baby's doing. So I'll say something like, are you smiling yet? I bet you are. And oh, there's your smile, right? I'm sure you all are doing this already, but again, it's about saying, wow, that is amazing how she's responding to my voice. Or did you notice how when I talk to her, she stops babbling or cooing, and then when I stop, she starts doing it? Have you noticed that at home? And so and a lot of times parents are like, yeah, and they kind of have a pride in their baby. So it's really a nice moment to encourage them in the kinds of things that they may already be doing. Next slide. At 4 months, so those 4 month olds get really busy, right? They're squirmy, their attention is all over the place, but they are beginning to kind of have a little bit more hand motions. They are babbling more and definitely interactive. So this is a great age actually to show a book to a baby. And the parents are already more confident. Again, Bright Futures talks about the daily routines and quiet time and active time. And you can use books in those kinds of discussions as well. So the next slide, please. So, I might say something like, just like you would with a 6 month old, here's a book. let's see, show them the book and see how they touch it, or how they, maybe hold it a little bit. They're not holding it like a 6-month-old, but they are interacting with it. Isn't it soft? Look at that. And then turn to the parents and say, oh, I love the way she's using their hands, or how she's looking. And I think with all of the ages, showing the parents what the child is doing, what are how the child is serving, right? We talk about serve and return interactions. And when we look at who serves more, parents or babies, it turns out babies are the ones that serve a lot more than parents do. And we just need to show parents and help parents see what those cues are that they can return to, so that they can have that back and forth conversation. And when you point out a really beautiful interaction, like, I love the way you did that, or I love the way she looks at you, or she responded to your voice, she really loves your voice the most. Those are really, really empowering things that you can say to parents. And really, parents love it. And I have to say that since I've started doing this, it's really been amazing how much more when when I return the baby to the parents, how much more they talk and interact with their baby after this interaction that I have with them. So next slide, please. So this is a handout that we can make available. This is something Anna and I developed that has basically the different visits between birth and the first week and the 4-month visit, with the kinds of specific books, recommendations, specific things that you might say to a parent, tips, and even examples of modeling. So last, I just want to quickly talk about some early research findings. And there's not a lot out there, but we do know, based on a study by Anna Miller-Fitzwater in Wake Forest, by Jim Guevara at CHOP, and Elizabeth Sinclair and Ellen Stevenson in Oregon. And they found that, so number one, it is feasible. It is easy to implement. The providers really enjoy it. The parents seem to like it too. It doesn't take a lot of extra time. 2 minutes at the most. Really, most of the time it was less than that. There are some improved outcomes in a couple of the studies, where in Anna's study, parents read with their infants an average of 1 more day per week in the intervention, meaning starting at birth versus starting at 6 months. In Jim's study, parents had more books at home. There was more frequency of reading and earlier age of initiation of reading, obviously. Now, I do want to point out that the Oregon study did not find differences between the interventions starting at birth and starting at 6 months. They did have a slightly different population in terms of their subjects did tend to have a higher level of education than the other 2 studies. Jim's study did show also that there was no change in language development. So that's an important thing if that is our outcome measure. The thing to note is that the way that they did their intervention is they had the providers give the books and a script of what to say to the parent, exactly like what Robert said not to do, right? You should do this. This is a great thing to do. So there wasn't any of the training on the interaction, which is what I'm really focusing on as part of our interaction. Really, the bottom line is that we need more research. What are the best practices? If we're going to give out books, how do we do it in a way that is empowering and not something else that parents need to be doing? And also, language is not always the outcome. We need to know could it have some effects on this child and parent relationship, on parenting stress, on attachment, on social emotional development. Next slide. So really, my take-home points are that the goals of starting Reach Out and Read in the first visits are to encourage reciprocal interactions with infants, talking, singing, reading, and playing, and that books are a great tool to do this. Another goal is to model, highlight, and praise. There's another really important praise, serve and return interactions during the visit, and the physical exam is a great time to do this. And finally, to increase the number of times that we provide parents with empowering messages that help strengthen the relationships between people and between babies and the people who love them. Last slide, I want to acknowledge Anna Miller-Fitzwater, who's done a lot of this work with me, and Reach Out and Read National. And I want to say also, Robert, you're always an inspiration to me. So thank you so much.
Thank you so much, Mariana, for that wonderful presentation and the many opportunities that you took to show us how this can be implemented. I think that was really helpful that's out of it. So if people have questions for Mariana, Alex is keeping us really well on time today. So if you have questions, please put them in the chat box and we will send them on to Mariana and get them back to you through our Reach Out and Read newsletter would be a really great way to do that. So, and you can put questions in even after the next break, once you've had a little snack and your brain is re-engaged.
All right, so next up we have Karen Mahoney, who's going to give our Reach Out and Read Wisconsin update.
Hi, everyone. I am so excited to be here today. I think Alex is getting my my PowerPoint up.
Yeah, I think if you click to the next slide, it should be there. There we go.
Great. So I am the affiliate leader for Reach Out and Read Wisconsin, and today is always one of my most favorite days of the year. We have broken our record for registrants for this meeting, so that's a pretty exciting milestone. And we have over 50 clinics represented with us today, and about 18 clinicians are here with us during the day, which is very exciting too. And a lot of other clinic staff, clinic coordinators, clinic managers. We really appreciate the time you're taking out of your day. We have also several of our literacy partners throughout the state, a librarian, Rhonda, who won an award, is from United Way. We have several of our Reach Out and Read Advisory Council members, and we really appreciate their support all through the year as well as today. We have several friends, colleagues from Reach Out and Read Iowa and Reach Out and Read Minnesota, and our 4 staff from our National Center. Lambrina Kless, the COO of National Center, was at our annual meeting last year. Some of you got to meet her then, but since it's virtual, we're really excited that more of our pals from National Center are able to join us. We also have a foundation supporter, Nicole. I'm glad you won something today, and really glad you were able to spend the extra time with us today learning more about what we do and how we try to have fun doing it. So as you all know, we're not just celebrating our annual meeting today. We're celebrating 10 years of Reach Out and Read being the early literacy initiative of Children's Health Alliance of Wisconsin and an affiliate of our national organization. We get substantial support from Children's Wisconsin, our fiscal agent, and UW Health American Family Children's Hospital. We wouldn't be where we are today and have achieved the levels of success that we have without the incredible support from the Children's Health Alliance. Matt Crispin and Karen Ordnance are here with us today, but there's a lot of other people and behind the scenes work that have helped us get where we are, make us look good, and assisted us in our tremendous growth. So we really want to make a call out to thank you for being with us on this journey. I usually talk about growth, quality, and sustainability during this talk, and the last section I'm just tweaking and talking about it more in terms of partnerships. So growth has not been a big milestone for us the past year. As most of you know, we stopped the new applications for clinics developing Reach Out and Read programs in the summer of 2019 due to not having the staff capacity to provide the technical assistance and support that we know that our clinics deserve to maintain the high quality level that you do. We are, however, now at 265 clinics. Several clinics were in the training process and just moved through. We do have at least 25 clinics on hold, and about 5 to 10 of those maybe even initiated applications during the pandemic, which just continually surprises me. So it just shows in Wisconsin and elsewhere that healthcare providers, we know how hard everyone is working, how overworked you are, but even in a pandemic, people are thinking in new and creative ways that they can support families. To give you a little bit of a rundown, as I always do, about our impact in 2019, more than 159,000 children were served by our participating clinics, and that represents 1 in 3 of all infants, toddlers, and preschoolers in the state. That's a big increase from our original 55 clinics in 2010 that were serving 35,000 children. So that's very exciting. 235,000 new books were distributed, and we have more than 1,850 clinicians involved, and probably 3 times more nursing staff, support staff, clinic managers that are working hard at the clinics to create cultures of literacy promotion that support the families. This map differs from the other map that you always see where a county turns red if there's 1 participating clinic. This map shows the impact per county in terms of children that are served. The darker the color, the greater the percentage of children served. And it's interesting to see in our rural areas, in the northern part of the state, that just 1 pediatric clinic or several family medicine clinics can make a huge impact in terms of the number of children served. Differences from the last year's map is we lost a little in terms of engagement on the eastern part of the state, but we gained in Milwaukee. We moved to another over 20% of children served in Milwaukee, though that's still very low considering that the southeastern part of the state is our largest density population area. So that area of the state, as well as the very northern counties that hit the UP and Lake Superior, are great growth areas for us in the future. This map I shared for the first time last year. This puts us kind of in the perspective of Reach Out and Read where we are within the nation. When we started 10 years ago, we were not just the new kid on the block, but a pretty small kid on the block. Dipesh likes to explain, kind of describe now of how much we've grown, but we are, we're now the state with the 7 most numbers of participating clinics in it. And we've also moved up a notch in terms of the affiliate size. So not all states have an affiliate. California, there's no statewide affiliate. So Reach Out and Read Wisconsin is the 6th largest affiliate by the number of clinics in it. So we are now kind of one of the big guns, and it's not just in terms of size, but the National Center staff that are on the phone today are probably always tired of us touting the quality of our clinics and bragging about how committed our clinic staff are. So we always, quality is always our priority over quantity, and it will always be that way. We know, and Dipesh did a very eloquent description of kind of what is transpiring right now in the state, in the nation. But we're impressed with how our clinics are continuing to provide high quality care. We only had 13 clinics that opted out of submitting any kind of a progress report for the July progress report when National Center actually gave that as an option this year. And we appreciate all the clinics that were able to give us any kind of information. We really do use that data. I love crunching through those, all those Excel spreadsheets. We know that all of our clinics have experienced challenges this year: staff furloughs, site role changes. We still have some peds clinics that are acting as COVID testing sites and aren't seeing kids for well visits. So we've had drops in well child visits at clinics, and we've had drops in book distribution rate. A couple of clinics in the spring were concerned about books being a transmission of infection, so they weren't handing out books while they were doing the Reach Out and Read program. And as with all things, life is a learning opportunity, and we move on. And we know that clinics have had staffing and bandwidth issues in terms of challenges in meeting with our staff, and we're trying to think of creative ways to get feedback from you all on how things are going and how we can assist. Our clinics continue to inspire us daily. We've heard of very creative solutions for how clinics are getting books to the clinics where they're seeing the children. And there's two metrics that I often report on each year, and one of them is the percent of clinics that have hit 100% clinician training during the year. We hit our all-time record this year of 85% in the middle of a pandemic. So maybe some clinics haven't been able to implement Reach Out and Read exactly the way they want, but they're still looking for ways that they can increase their quality, and 85% is an awesome figure. And the other thing that I noticed while I was looking at data preparing for this presentation was that the number of clinics that have hit our best practice site quality classification of purple, which is a level above the national centers, is actually very close this year to where it was last year. And this year we were in a pandemic. So some clinics are still managing to hang on and do what they have always done. But we know others are struggling. And so we really want you to tell us what we can do to assist you in doing your jobs better. So last week, a customer service survey went out, I believe from my email. Please take the time to fill it out. It should only take 10 minutes, and give us some specific ideas and think of something creative. It doesn't have to be the way we've always done things. We get great feedback from you all. You know, you often tell us we do a wonderful job, and we love hearing that, but we really want to hear things that we could do differently. You won't hurt our feelings. We want to be able to help you support the families in your communities. Every year, we also think about how we can up our game. What things can we do? How can we assist clinics in leveraging what they do to increase the support to families? And two things really rose to the surface this year during all the conversations in the national network that happened kind of over the course of the summer with issues with pandemics, how they hit the clinics. And we really realized that we're missing out an opportunity of really supporting parents in those early months. And so we really want to, in Wisconsin, proactively roll out pulling Reach Out and Read back to birth. And so I have this great 3-year rollout plan, but I don't want anyone to panic. Don't anyone go back to their clinic and tomorrow say, we have to start doing Reach Out and Read and handing books out before 6 months. That's not what I'm talking about. We already have 20% of our clinics that are already handing out books prior to 6 months. That's the group we're going to start with. We already have this introductory video that Mariana showed a clip of and that we had sent out a couple of months ago. We're going to send that out more. National Center is working on a training for Reach Out and Read in those early months. And so the clinics that are already handing out the books, those will be the first clinics that will be invited to do the training. And as will be no surprise for you clinics in Wisconsin, completing the training allows you to get additional book support. So we will be providing book support and trying to raise extra funds for even extra support, because we realize that doing books in the earlier times, there's so many visits that it can increase the cost to 30 to 40%, but we don't want that to be a barrier. We're working on that issue. The second piece that has that we all have talked about it on the national network and has come out of the real glaring reality of inequities and disparities and racial justice issues that have been on the national and local conversations this year is thinking more intentionally about our books. And National Center has, I don't know, maybe 3 or 4 different kinds of committees now. I'm on several of them talking about diversity in books and how we can do the whole book process better. So we are working on a national level to increase the diversity of books that are accessible to clinics. And we also want to start conversations with clinics about increasing the percentage of diverse books that you provide to your patients, regardless of the population of families that you serve. Because we know, and we've chatted with all of you about how important it is that for books to be mirrors for children, but it's equally important for books to be windows. And a child growing up in Park Falls, Wisconsin may not live in a diverse community now, but who knows where she's going to be in 20 years when she is excited to start her profession and follow the lead of maybe people here and make an impact in helping and change the world. So it's incumbent on us to help the children of Wisconsin now learn about the broader world and see diversity as bringing richness to their communities. Partnerships. We have several exciting partnerships going on. The first is with Wisconsin Department of Children and Families. We were included in the preschool development grant this year that provided your book funds. They provided substantial support to us. And they are really looking at this grant as something holistic and something that goes outside the barriers of the state entities. So it's really an exciting time right now for Wisconsin in terms of the conversations are along the lines of what Reach on Read has always been doing for years. We're looking at supporting children in their youngest years and supporting families and bringing in collaborative networks. The second grant is the Wisconsin Infant Toddler Policy Project, the WITPP, and there's no way I can make that slide off my tongue. It's spearheaded by WICA, Wisconsin Early Child Care Association, funded by Pritzker's Children's Initiative, and right now we're in a 3-year implementation grant. We don't have any funds related to this, but we're included in terms of our growth measures in terms of bringing the access issue and inclusion in terms of us providing services to more children. This is another exciting collaborative opportunity in terms of not just the usual players are at the table, but they're inviting other agencies. Wisconsin Counties Association, the Council for Strong America has over the past 5 years recognized more the importance of early childhood intervention in earlier years, supporting children as a strategy for making a strong workforce in the future. And as the various state agencies, you'll notice the Department of Workforce Development is included in that. So what we have learned through our involvement with the WITPP grant is that, as Dipesh had mentioned, Wisconsin was in a daycare crisis prior to COVID. Half of all residents and up to 80% of residents in rural areas prior to the pandemic lived in a childcare desert. That means there was a significant shortage of slots compared to parents that were looking for slots for their children. Now, this is an issue. I know people that own businesses in northern part of the state, they can't hire people because the people that want the jobs don't have a safe and high quality place for their children to be during the day. That is a crisis for our economy. We have more than 75% of the children in the state younger than 4 were in out-of-home care. So it's a big issue. The other piece that Dipesh also alluded to was the importance of supporting the caregivers. In the clinics, we support the parents that are providing the care for the children. But you all know the families that you work with, and many of you have young children yourselves, and you know how many families have children in daycare and how important it is also for those people to have the skills they need to provide the good care for healthy development for children. 52%, more than half of daycare teachers have an associate's degree or higher, but they're earning significantly less than other people with the same degrees that are doing other jobs or in other professions. So that really speaks to what value we're placing on the children in our state and our nation. It's no surprise that more than half of these dedicated professionals have requested at least one form of public assistance, or that there's more than a 40% turnover. And that scares those of us that really know about how important it is for newborns, infants, toddlers to have consistency and stability in the relationships that they have. And those younger babies are a good part of their day may be with caregivers. So the reason, some of you might be wondering why Dipesh and I have brought up the issue of daycare, it's because we really need to think about children more holistically. I really subscribe to that. It takes a village, and we are all caring about children and how they develop. Sorry, I hit the button and then nothing happened. So with this grant, we are considered an advocacy partner. And we will be sending information to our clinics through our Reach Out and Read Wisconsin newsletter about information that you can share with families about how they can learn about daycare and high quality other programs they can access. And as well, opportunities for you all to voice your opinion on how important daycare is to the health and strength of the families that you serve. And please don't ever forget that clinicians and healthcare professionals, your voices are really respected and heard at the state level. Alex, can you help me advance? I don't know what I'm doing wrong.
Yeah, I think also we're just a few minutes over.
I just have one other quick thing to say with our last, maybe we could just take it out of the break. Sorry, I meant to set my timer and I didn't.
That's okay. I took control back, so.
Okay, so we flip to the next one. So our third partnership I wanted to highlight is an existing partnership that will be strengthened. So many of you know through multiple kinds of communication that Reach Out and Read Wisconsin will no longer be under the financial and fiscal auspices of Children's Wisconsin, but on January 1st, we're going to be moving to Reach Out and Read National Center. And this will be our new logo. We will push out ways to communicate with us in our new website in December. We're very appreciative of the Alliance's assistance during this transition time and extremely excited about our chance, you can advance, Alex, our opportunities to support you better, which is why we're doing this. But have no fear, the team stays the same. We all are not going anywhere. And this transition is done in a way to help us move to the next chapter for our next 10 years and support our growth so that we can support you in what you do. Thank you so much.
Awesome, thank you, Karen. So we are a little bit over, but before we go to our next break, we're gonna do one more raffle wheel for Dr. Glusman's book, actually. She wrote a children's book called I Love You Like Sunshine, and a lot of clinics across the country give that out at the newborn visit. So we are gonna give away 10 of those books just to keep with our theme. So Amber, are we all set? Okay, awesome. All right, here we go. Right, number 22.
Jackie Cook.
All right, for the second book of I Love You Like Sunshine, number 36.
Jackie, Echo Kraut. Yay, sorry if I
Nice.
said your name wrong.
All right, number 58.
Becca Peltier.
All right, number 64.
Kathy Timmerman.
Awesome. All right, for book number 5, halfway through. Number 11.
Catherine McLean.
Awesome.
Catherine.
Lee.
All right, we got a couple more here. Number 53.
Put on my AirPods. If
Uh,
I in the next like 4.
Nicole Bean.
All right, number 18.
Jill Sherbert. Yay.
I think I saw her earlier. That's awesome. All right, 2 more. Number 7.
Lily Mize.
Oh, yay, Lily. Awesome. All right, and for the last copy, number 28.
Danae Hishke. Yay, Danae.
Awesome. All right, so we will mail those out to people in the next few weeks. So now we're gonna do another short break. If you could come back at 11:29, just so we have enough time to do the intro of our last speaker of the day, that would be great. So please turn off your cameras. I'll mute everyone. See you in about 11 minutes. Thank you.
It looks like everyone is hopping back on, so welcome back. Hopefully it was a good break. So we are just gonna roll right into our next presentation. So as a reminder, if everyone wants to make sure they're on mute and turn your cameras back on so we can see your smiling faces as you're able. So I would like to welcome Dr. Monique Jindal. Dr. Jindal is a general academic fellow and internal med peds physician at Johns Hopkins Medical Institution. The Reach Out and Read Wisconsin team had the honor of hearing Dr. Jindal speak at a Reach Out and Read National Center call earlier this year. And we were so inspired that we wanted to share her words with all of you. Dr. Jindal has also been a guest speaker on the Reach Out and Read podcast, which is hosted by our very own Dr. Dipesh Nasaria. So if you want to hear more from her and other great content, take a look at the podcast as well. And with that, I will turn things over to Dr. Jindal. And I think you may be on mute, Dr. Jindal.
Can you hear me now?
Yep.
All right. Sorry about that, guys. Not the best with technology. Hopefully the talk will be better for you, though. So thanks for the introduction. I'm really excited to be here today and grateful that you all invited me to speak. But today I'm going to be talking about the role of stories on our path towards racial justice. And you can follow me on Twitter at Dr. Mo Jindal if you're interested. I want to start off by saying that I don't have any financial disclosures. However, I do have some other disclosures that I would like to make today. The first one being that I am the daughter of immigrant parents. I was born and raised in a racialized society like many of us in the United States. My mother was an elementary school teacher in a predominantly Black neighborhood. I, however, grew up in a predominantly white neighborhood. I absolutely adore my patients, and I, like everyone else, I am capable of being racist. So I invite you all to just take a few moments to reflect and think about what your personal disclosures might be. As we go through this talk, there are a few things that I really hope that you all can get out of this next 30 minutes. I hope that you all will be able to understand the stages of racial identity development, that you'll be able to explain the concept of racial ethnic socialization, which we'll get into and name one benefit of it. recognize that the link that exists between stories and mitigating racism. And then hopefully, and most importantly, you'll be inspired to make diversity in your book collection a priority after this. I think it would be impossible to have this talk today without talking about what's been going on in our nation in the current climate. Race, racism, protests, Black Lives Matter, police reform, all of these topics have dominated headlines for several months now. And after the killing of 46-year-old George Floyd in broad daylight at the hands of police, people have taken to the streets to say that enough is enough. And despite all of that, the pain has continued to follow. In your own state, Jacob Blake was shot multiple times by police in front of his own children. If you haven't seen the footage, it's painful, enraging, and ultimately traumatic. Sorry. But the reality is that the presence of racism and police brutality has dated back hundreds of years in our country. And the fact that a black and white photo like this from the 40s bears an eerie resemblance to those that we may find in our local papers today shows us just how little progress we have made and how much more work we have to do. And as we're going through all these moments in our nation together, there's been this renewed energy around racism as a public health issue. And people, especially people within the pediatrics field, are clamoring to say that they're not racist, but instead that they're anti-racist. But I think we all know that changes like that don't happen overnight. You know, you might be seeing articles all over the place with book lists for adults, what you see on the right-hand side, different things that we should be doing to educate ourselves. Those of us in the medical field, maybe our bookshelves look more like what looks like on the left with all these medical textbooks. And I think we know that our bookshelves can't change overnight, and also we as humans don't change overnight. But I think what's really important to focus on is what the science is telling us about racism in children and their health. And just last year, the AAP released a policy statement that discussed really in depth the profound impact of racism on child health. And it showed that it compiled research that shows that experiences of racism for children are linked to anxiety, depression, and poor physical health, and that vicarious racism, which is actually the act of witnessing a racist event, can also impact a child's health. And so those children of Jacob Blake who saw their father shot multiple times, who now is disabled, will forever remember that moment. And we really need to think about children like his and think about what we can do to mitigate the impact of racist events like that. And honestly, I think that Reach Out and Read is the perfect organization to help us do this. And I really it's been so great to get to work with you all more and to learn more about your amazing organization. But if you look at your own mission statement, the very things that Reach Out and Read strives for is what we need right now. Basically, Reach Out and Read is an organization that says it's committed to the development of patience and empathy through stories that transport children to places and times they have never experienced. This emphasis on building empathy, creating new experiences and exposures through books is exactly what we need right now. And despite all the racial turmoil that we have been witnessing in our country for the past several months and really hundreds of years, the facts are that demographics in our country are changing and increasing diversity is prevalent everywhere. So since 2010, 96% of all US counties registered declines in their white population shares. On the left, you'll see a map in which minorities are highly represented. Red represents Black, green represents Hispanic, and blue represents Asian. On the right, this is a map of all of the Reach Out and Read sites that are also well distributed throughout the country. So this juxtaposition supports that our populations are changing and that we must change with them as pediatricians and as Reach Out and Read develops their mission. Many people may ask, well, racism and race seem kind of like heavy issues, and maybe children are too young for us to really talk to this about them. Does it really matter if we start talking right now? And should we wait until maybe they're more mature to handle this? But really, we're finding out that the short answer is yes, it is appropriate to discuss this with children and that we should, and that kids are impacted at a very early age. And a great representation of this is the doll test, which I do talk about a little bit in the podcast that Dr. Nafsaria shared with you all. But basically in the 40s, 2 psychologists conducted a series of studies with young Black children, and they gave them white and Black dolls, and they asked them different questions and asked them, which doll do you like more? which doll is nice? Which doll do you prefer to play with? And we found that what they found was that the majority of Black children preferred the white doll. After they were asked this series of questions, they then were asked a question like, now show me the doll that's most like you. And the psychologist basically said that the children became really emotionally upset having to identify the dolls that they had initially rejected as the dolls that were most similar to them. And some of the children even stormed out of the room. Even though the study was done in the 40s, it's been replicated many times since and has shown similar results. It's also been done with Hispanic children as well. And so this idea that children are impacted pretty early on is really supported by what we think about when we talk about racial ethnic identity development. And so we're all in this field that requires us to think about how kids are developing, whether you're a pediatrician, whether you're a librarian, whether you're, supporting Reach Out and Read in some other fashion. We're all thinking about, okay, when do kids develop different skills? When do they say their first word? When are they able to start forming sentences? And similarly, as we're thinking about these milestones, children are actually going through milestones regarding their racial identity development. And to make it perfectly clear, this is for all children, not just children of color. So as early as 3 months, children notice race-based differences. Some research has even shown that children who are 6 months old prefer people that have the same skin tone as their mother. By age 2, children are soaking up all of the socially prevalent stereotypes that are going on around them. And at that young age, children might express that by being scared, by showing fear. By age 3, children can actually express explicit forms of racial bias. By age 4, they're starting to understand the ideas of fairness and that what teasing is and that teasing is wrong. By age 5, children of color can be conscious of the stereotypes that are being made about their group. And then by age 8, children are aware of social norms and they can begin to develop these implicit forms of bias. So while when they're younger, around that age of 3, they might be showing these more explicit forms, by age 8, they're kind of aware that maybe that's not fair and that's not right. So they might be doing it more unconsciously, more implicitly. And then by age 10, many children become set in their, or by age 12, many children become set in their beliefs. So as you can see that what happens in this beginning stages of life really sets the stage for a child into their adulthood. And it really gives us an important time period for us to consider what we can do to make a difference. And that's where this concept of racial ethnic socialization comes into play. And so it's just a fancy term for basically saying that, for basically describing the verbal and nonverbal messages that children are receiving about the evidence of racism and the meaning of race, the existence of racism and the meaning of race. And so that might be messages that they're receiving about their own identity, about the identity of the groups which they belong to, about how groups interact with one another, how individuals from different groups interact with one another. And then it's also telling them something about where they exist in a social hierarchy. Racial ethnic socialization comes in many different forms. And today we're really focusing on cultural pride reinforcement. So these are messages that basically are showcasing pride in where you come from and instilling ethnic pride. And so that's something that can exist for both dominant and non-dominant cultures. Another form of racial ethnic socialization is preparation for bias. So basically messages that are kind of preparing kids for the types of discrimination that they might face. The next one is promotion of mistrust. And this is one that has actually shown negative impacts on children. So basically the idea that you're teaching children to not trust the adult figures around them and some of the social institutions around them. And then other ones that are also not as well studied are egalitarianism. So this idea that we all are created equal and that everything should be fair and that we all should receive the same things. That's also kind of come into question when we think about equity versus equality. And that really just because you give everyone the exact same thing doesn't mean it's really equitable. And then mainstream socialization. So this idea that, well, we should just socialize minorities to be like the dominant culture. And so really the top 3 are the ones that have been studied the most. The top 2 are the ones that have the most positive impacts on children. And then that first one is the one that by far has the most research has been done on and has the most positive impacts. And really, I think is when we talk about books and we talk about stories and how they might have a positive impact on children, I think it really comes down to cultural pride reinforcement. So these messages that children are receiving are really coming from all over the place. They might be getting them from their teachers, from media, as we're seeing more and more these days, doctors, But for young children, it's largely coming from their parents. And so this idea that we can talk about race and racism with children, while we might be able to do it as an organization, also thinking about the ways in which we can help parents do this. And I think that this in general can be very daunting, but the reality is that the concept is not really new for families of color, and especially Black families in the United States. So I wanted to spend a few minutes just looking at an example of what the talk might look like for some of our families.
Who said that?
The lady at the store.
That is not a compliment.
Listen, it's an ugly, nasty word, and you are going to hear it. Nothing I can do about that. But you are not going to let that word hurt you. You hear me? There are some people who think you don't deserve the same privileges just because of what you look like. It's not fair. It's not. Remember, you can do anything they can. The difference is you gotta work twice as hard and be twice as smart.
Come straight home after practice. You got your ID? Guess I stopped you.
How's your review?
We're good.
You good?
Yeah,
You see?
we're good.
Okay, good. Now, when you get pulled over,
I'm a good driver. Okay?
baby,
Don't worry.
this is not about you getting a ticket. This is about you not coming home.
I'm gonna be okay. Right? Okay.
It's not fair. But you keep showing up.
You are not pretty for a Black girl. You are beautiful, period. Okay? Don't ever forget that.
Sorry, I hope everyone was able to hear that well. So, I think it's important for us to be aware of what that might look like, even if it's something that all of us are not used to. I don't have children myself, but I do have little nephews. And every time I watch that video, it makes me think about, when I think about their safety and I think about them going out into the world. And so I think by understanding or trying to understand each other's realities and tapping into that empathy, we can really make a difference. And so while families of color have been doing this for a very long time, white families or families of the dominant culture do this less. And so research shows that 60% of white parents of kindergarten age children have never talked to their child about race. And those that have, 70% of white mothers report using a colorblind approach. And so a colorblind approach is this idea that skin color doesn't really matter, or this idea that we don't see color. And research supports that the colorblind approach is not effective, and that parents who report that they have no bias, but do use a colorblind approach both with how they navigate life and how they navigate their children's lives, actually demonstrate more explicit racial biases towards African Americans. And the reality is that this really matters for all kids. So although families of color may be used to discussing race, racism, discrimination with their kids, and white families are maybe less used to this, we do know that it's important for all children. So this racial ethnic socialization, or these verbal and nonverbal messages that children receive about race, influence both white and non-white children. So all children have to understand what it means to be part of their own group, whether you're white, whether you're Indian, whether you're Black, whether you're Latino. You do have some sort of group identity, and you understand where you fit in the social hierarchy and what that means for how you operate in the world. And so the research shows that racial ethnic identity development is really influenced by these messages that kids receive. It influences the way that they think about people who are not within their inner group, the way that they treat people who are not in their inner group, and then how they respond when they're in situations that really promote diversity and in situations where they are witnessing racism. And so some of you may be thinking, well, our children don't necessarily live in a community that has a lot of diversity, and they're not going to come into contact with a lot of people that look different than them. But research also shows that children of color and white children, when exposed to diversity, have higher test scores, they're more likely to enroll in college, they have better critical thinking and problem solving skills, they have improved self-confidence and enhanced leadership skills. So this is something that's really important for all kids regardless. And I think the other thing that I would say is that given where the media is at these days, we can see that it doesn't necessarily where you live doesn't tell you how much you're going to be exposed to something. And so I kind of want to call out the elephant in the room for a moment. Maybe you all are thinking about how uncomfortable it might be to have this conversation either with your patients or with your own children. And it's a fact. Talking about racism is uncomfortable and it feels risky. But research shows that we really do need to be doing it, that children soak up the environments around them. They're getting these messaging from all sorts of sources, teachers, media, other families, other children. And so if we're not intervening, then we can't really guide what those messages look like. We can't hear what they're soaking up and where their small minds are taking them or what they're imagining. And so we really have an opportunity to help guide children and guide the messaging that we want them to have. We also have to consider that if we choose not to say anything and we choose to stay silent, what messaging does that give to our children as well? And so I know that I don't have to tell this group how important the stories are. And with such at times, uncomfortable and difficult conversation, I think stories and books can be a really beautiful, non-threatening way for us to bridge such a difficult conversation. So I'm sure everyone here has heard of the concept of books as mirrors, windows, and maps. So books as mirrors, reflecting our own identity. Books as windows, showing us different worlds, allowing us to take steps in different people's shoes. And what I really love is this idea of maps. So books as a way for children to find their place in the world and to see where they can go. And so really normalizing through books that kids can be anything that they want to be. And kids from more dominant cultures can learn to see people that look different than them in some of these roles. So thinking about how this idea of racial consciousness might impact reading, what happens if a kid doesn't see themselves in a book or they only see certain depictions of certain people? So children may ask themselves, how am I represented in the images in the books? What do the stories tell me about myself? What do they tell me about people who are different than me? And then what does it mean if I'm not in the stories I read or if I'm only shown in one way in the stories that I read? And so a few quotes from some authors. A Latina children's book author says, as a young child, she felt lost in the library among the rows of books that reflected the lives of other children, but not her own. She did not feel important because there were no real books depicting her. Or the author Rudine Sims Bishop, when children cannot find themselves reflected in the books they read, or when the images they see are distorted, negative, or laughable, they learn a powerful lesson about how they are devalued in society, in the society of which they are a part of. So I want to spend a few minutes just talking about what diversity in books could look like and what positive impacts it could have. And so this is one of my favorite books. It's called Hair Love. And, you know, I think this is a good example of a book that helps debunk stereotypes. So it's a story of a Black father doing his daughter's hair. And a study that was done by the CDC actually found that Black fathers are more likely than their white and Hispanic counterparts to feed, eat with, bathe, diaper, dress, play with, and read to their children on a daily basis. When we think about the stereotypes that exist about Black fathers in society, you know, it doesn't necessarily reflect that. And so this is a good example of a book that can help us normalize these images. Books can also be kids doing really mundane things. So maybe you all remember Corduroy. It was one of my favorites growing up, but this is just a young Black girl going shopping with her mom. So normalizing that kids are kids and people are people, and we all do a lot of very similar things. Books can also be representative of many different kinds of diversity. So it might be diversity of religion, of race, of able-bodiedness, all of these different things. There are books that represent Latina families. There are books that represent Native American families. This wonderful author, Meg Medina, is actually on that podcast with me that Dr. Navsaria shared, and she's lovely as well. And then books can also show us sexual and gender minority youth and really normalize that for children as well. And this book, as you can see by just the few illustrations shown here, is really, really beautifully illustrated. So I highly recommend this one. And so in an effort to make this more of a priority, this is kind of how the group has come together. So I did not, just to be clear, I didn't help write the impact of racism on child health policy statement for the AAP, but I work closely with the authors. And so myself and the authors of that policy statement, along with Reach Out and Read and AAP's Early Childhood and Literacy Subcommittee, have come together to really make sure that this can be a priority for our clinics. There are many different places that you all can find lists of diverse books. And while that cohort that I just mentioned is really working on making sure that that happens, I think it should be available soon. There's probably people on this call that can speak more to when that will be available. But there are other places you can look. You can look at raceconscious.org, at theconsciouskid.org, and embracerace.org. Also, when you're looking for your own books, there are many different standards that are out there as far as what's the most helpful. I just wanted to share a few ideas with you guys. So avoiding the 5 F's is one of them. So just this idea that not representing cultures in just one way, or people who are different from us in just one way. So avoiding just focusing on food or fashion or folklore or festivals and celebrations or famous people. So kind of even thinking about that idea of corduroy. So just a Black child with her Black mother going shopping. Really looking for books that present mirrors that are giving voice to those who rarely have a voice. Development of social action skills. So this can be things like helping the elderly or being environmentally conscious, books that kind of have that kind of messaging behind it. Recognizing inequities within social structures. So that can be something like gender and the types of sports that are gender normative for kids. And then collaboration around relevant issues. So this idea that kids can kind of band together against things that are unfair or unjust. And then while we're doing all of this work within the organization and as a profession, I think it's important for us all to take stock of where we're at and think about what we can do as individuals to better educate ourselves and to better understand what our stories are and what our upbringing is and why we're at the point that we're at as far as our racial consciousness. There are a lot of books out there. I've read most of these and I would recommend every single one of them. But it's really important for, if we're going to be doing this work with children, that we do the work ourselves as well. And then I think just being aware that change takes time, change is difficult. You know, hopefully some of the things you've learned or relearned in this talk today, you know, launches you into that action phase and you're getting into your email and telling everyone how much we need diverse books. And then maybe you'll have a moment where maybe you try to talk to a family about race and it doesn't go very well and you'll be in the relapse phase or you feel less excited about it. But just understanding that change, there's a cycle of change and things take time, and we're all capable of change, and we all kind of have to be kind to ourselves as we're going through it. And so I'm hoping that all of you will take some of these next steps. You'll consider enhancing the book collection at your site with diverse and inclusive books. You'll partner with different organizations to enhance diversity in not only literature, but also the authors and illustrators that create the books that we're giving to our children. You'll support further research. So while we know that diversity is really important for all children and for all people, we do need to continue showcasing the science behind this to continue showing how important this is. And then that you'll lean into some of that discomfort and don't be afraid to mess up, because you will mess up. I've messed up and we all will continue to do that. And that's how we grow and learn. And then the thing I would like to end on is just really the importance of empathy and how we all have a story to tell. We all have moments in our lives that have made us the way that we are and have made us see the world the way that we do. And I think if we can all be willing to listen to each other's stories, we really can make progress. And I know we're running out of time, but I do just want to show a few minutes of a story from a few children.
Racism means basically like a large part of a race feels that they're superior to another race. And so not only do they believe that, but they act on it.
Examples would be in class. Sometimes I'd be the only black kid, and we read a book like, I don't know, Huck Finn, and then there's that uncomfortable moment, the magic word come up, and people would look at you and like, what's his reaction and things like that.
I was walking home from school with this one white girl, and we just gotten off the bus, and we were almost home, and there were these group of black kids that just gone out of school. And she was like, oh, let's cross the street. There's a group of black kids. I don't want to run into them. And so she told me, which I don't even know why she would do that.
I used to wear a sweatband, like, just to reinforce my wrist. And I had a teacher come up to me and say, you should take it off because it looks gang affiliated.
I've been in situations where, you know, I had to cross the street because I didn't want to scare the white lady that was walking.
It would get to the point where I would start to count how many times a woman would clutch her bag.
When I was 16, I was leaving my mom's house in my pajamas, which had snowmen on them, with my brother, and we were actually stopped by the police rather aggressively. I've been stopped by the cops on my way between classes, because we have two separate buildings, walking from one building to the other building, as my white students in the same class walked by me.
It's kind of upsetting because we live in a world where my mom has to be afraid when I walk outside from the people that are like meant to protect me. And I don't like when my mother feels like that. You know, I love my mother. I want her to always be happy.
You know, I walk tall, I keep my head up, try to be very articulate and polite. And so, of course, I was like, okay, I'm going to be fine because I act a certain way. And of course, that has absolutely nothing to do with it. The way people perceive you, is not up to you. My parents taught me, cops are your friends. You're supposed to, they're here to protect you. But all I'm seeing is the opposite. So how can I not be afraid when I feel like I'm being hunted? When I feel like I'm there to fill a quota?
We are in a so-called free society. And as a black man, we literally don't feel free. We don't know what freedom is.
Every time we're killed, the first thing you see on the news is, criminal record. Or something like that. So from the second the bullet hits us, already we're starting to be dehumanized.
With black people like myself, we don't get as many chances as they do. So you have to be aware and you have to watch out and you can't mess up.
This was an extremely emotionally taxing process for me in terms of coming to terms with maybe the nature of racism in my own life and in this country and in this world. And if you wait until somebody is 12, 13, and 14 to put that on them, it can be really difficult.
My dad, he's just like the honest one. He's like, listen, son, like there are things in this world, like you kind of have to watch out. He doesn't want me to live in fear, but he wants me to be aware.
I want people to know that I'm perfectly fine and I'm not gonna hurt anybody or do anything bad.
I should be judged about like who I am and like and what kind of person I am.
My parents would tell me, especially my mom.
Sorry, I'm going to stop there so that we can have some time for some questions. But you can look that up on New York Times, conversations about race with Black children. And so just ending on this, in a time full of hate and a lot of intolerance, children are always the things that lift us up. And so maybe children and the stories that we tell them could be the antidote to a lot of what's going on right now. And so I just encourage everyone to stay outside of your comfort zone as much as possible, because I do believe that's where the magic happens, and to keep the conversation going. And this is my contact information. I can take questions now, but also I wholeheartedly mean it. Reach out to me anytime via my cell phone, via email. And I would love to touch base and have more conversations about this. Thank you.
Thank you, Dr. Jindal, for important start of the conversation, I think, and opening that up for our Reach Out Me Wisconsin network. And we do have a few minutes for questions. One question earlier was if your slides would be available to share. So we will be sharing out the recording of the whole day on our website, but are you willing to share your slides as well, Dr. Jindal?
Absolutely, no problem.
And then one other question, do you have some examples of ways that providers can start to have that conversation about race or about the windows and mirrors during a Reach Out and Read visit?
Absolutely. I think now is a really interesting time because the way to get into the conversation is really not that hard at this moment. I think if you are seeing families of color, I've been asking a lot of my patients, I'll start with, how are you doing? Which is a very basic question, and maybe they'll answer with something completely unrelated to what I'm getting at, but I'll be like, no, but like, how are you doing? The world is tough right now. And sometimes that allows us to have some conversations about how they and their children are navigating some of the things that have been going on. I think it's interesting, a lot of providers have said that, parents of white children have actually come to them and said, how do I talk to my kids about race? And so I think those moments too are really helpful to show that there are books that parents can read with their kids to kind of start the conversation. So I think there's a few different ways, but I do acknowledge that it is not something that we all do on a regular basis, and it will take some time and likely some practice in our own comfort.
Okay, and then in the comments, we just have a lot of thanks and what a wonderful presentation that was. So again, we thank you, Dr. Jindal, for sharing today. And I am going to turn things over to Alex now for some announcements. Thank you again, Dr. Jindal.
Yes, thank you. And thanks, Amber, for facilitating that. So we are now in our last portion of the day. And Dipesh and Karen are going to facilitate that. So I'm going to turn it over to them.
Hi, everyone. So Taylor Tarantello has been with us here today, and I think you all received a survey to fill out, and she has a All About Books book pack that she's going to give away. And so Taylor, go for it. Thank you for being with us today. Is Taylor still with us?
Sorry, it's muted. Thank you for having us. This was so insightful, and I can't wait to share everything that we learned today with the rest of the team at All About Books. I did go through and did a random selector to find the winner for the book pack, and the winner is Ginger Ambrose. So I will also post that in the chat and send her an email to get her contact information. But thank you to all who participated in the survey.
Great, congratulations, Ginger. Tash, are you still with us?
I am.
Good. I think you're gonna introduce Lambrina to say a few words.
Yeah, and I did want to just take a moment to say that from the perspective of the National Center Board of Directors and someone who was involved in a lot of the work that's been going on at the National Center around just the business model, right? How are we structured as an organization nationally and so on? That this transition to of Reach Out and Read Wisconsin to the National Center is really a wonderfully positive thing. I joke that we were of course in a full part of the business model task force because the goal was to have there be representation not just from the National Center owned affiliates and National Center staff, but also of affiliates like our own that live, so to speak, outside of the National Center fiscal and administrative umbrella. And I joke that we liked what we saw so much that it's like the hair club for men, right? We're not just the owners; we became clients. The Health Alliance has been an amazing incubator for us. They've really got us going, helped us hire the amazing staff that we have, and to grow to the astonishing size that we've reached in not a very long period of time, and support the quality. Much like medical training, though, you start to find yourself the needs of becoming more specialized, right? That is, the more we do around early literacy, the more we find that we're working closer and closer with our colleagues doing early literacy, which includes other Reach Out and Read affiliates and the national work. And it became evident to us that we would have to sadly move on, kind of go off to college, as we say. So it's really a wonderful, positive move, and we will of course continue to collaborate as an organization that works with 265 clinics throughout the state. We have every desire and need to continue collaborating on all sorts of other projects, including with the Health Alliance and other organizations. So, but the person who adroitly managed, ran, and kept our business model task force moving forward and makes Reach Out and Read national work in so many other ways is the extraordinary Lambrina Kless, the Chief Operating Officer of Reach Out and Read National Center. And I wanted to give her a few moments to say a few words. Lambrina.
Dipesh, thank you so much. I hope everyone can hear me.
Mm-hmm.
Wonderful. Thank you. First of all, it is just so wonderful to be here with all of you today. I had the great pleasure of being at last year's annual meeting and look forward to seeing everyone at the Dells in future years. So thank you so much, first of all, to the Wisconsin team and all of our amazing medical champions, providers, and partners. The work of Reach Out and Read Wisconsin and that incredible impact in working with more than a third of the state's pediatric primary care clinics at this point in that relatively short amount of time is really a testament to the commitment and the dedication of everyone who is here and everyone from the Reach Out and Read Wisconsin community who is here today in virtual spirit as well. So thank you so much for everything that you do, and thank you for the opportunity to be a part of that work and also to collaborate very closely with the Reach Out and Read Wisconsin team. As Dipesh noted, 10 years in for Reach Out and Read Wisconsin, heading off to middle school and to college as a protege. Reach Out and Read Wisconsin has just done such tremendous work, and the partnerships that you all have locally are so incredible, and I know that they will continue, and we are really excited for those to continue in the future. We are absolutely thrilled and just want to echo everything that Dipesh named about Reach Out and Read Wisconsin becoming officially part of what we call the Reach Out and Read Inc., the 501c3 family. We'll be ringing in the new year together on January 1st when that change becomes official, and we are really, really excited and really grateful to already be working on all of the things that will ensure that that's incredibly smooth and everything continues running as it is. So looking forward to having more opportunities like this to be able to talk with you all, collaborate more closely, and just really excited for what the next 10 years are going to bring. So thank you all so much.
Thank you so much, Lambrina. All right, to close here, to wrap up, we have just a couple more things, more fun things. So year after year, we're amazed at the commitment and energy that clinic staff invest to make their Reach Out and Read programs successful. I mean, you know, you are the folks who make it work. You are the interface with families, and with your clinicians who are, you are making the Reach Out and Read model happen. We hear all sorts of examples of staff that are coming up with innovative new systems, engaging and training residents and other clinic staff and new providers, and establishing community partnerships, right, that reach outside of the healthcare world proper, in order to strengthen the message that's delivered at that clinic. We couldn't do what we do without all of you. You are just absolutely amazing. So to honor this passion, creativity, and energy, we have created the Reach Out and Read Wisconsin Excellence Award. And this year, 2 individuals will receive this award in addition to a framed certificate and a $50 gift card. And I'll turn it over to Karen to tell us a little bit about those individuals.
Thank you, Depesh. And Alex, are we ready? Okay. So our first award honoree has been her clinic's on-site coordinator at least since Reach Out and Read Wisconsin started as an affiliate in 2010. She's demonstrated long-standing dedication to her clinic's Reach Out and Read program. She frequently held lunchtime training sessions for providers, residents, and other clinic staff to learn more about the program and to view the required training videos. She attended the first and then many subsequent Reach Out and Read Wisconsin annual meetings. Actually, I think all of them until her first grandchild was born, and unfortunately it's the same month, so it's a tricky issue. Her loyalties are pulled. And she often created mini training sessions for residents from the sessions that she attended at the annual meetings. She coordinates with a variety of community organizations to collect gently used books and has applied for multiple grants to be able to purchase books to provide to adolescents, just to share the wealth of joy of reading to all ages. And something she just started recently, when residents graduate, she gives them a children's book to remind them about the importance of reading aloud for kids' development and the importance of advocating for their youngest patients. She's always thinking of new things to do. We are so proud and happy to announce that Susan Goltz of UW Health Northeast Family Medicine Center is the first winner of our Reach Out and Read Excellence Award. And Susan, are you on with us with video? You want to say something? I can't find you easily. Well, maybe she's just stunned for words, not like Susan, but we will move on. You can say something in the chat, Susan. I'll wait one more second. Okay. Oh, Susan, you might be on the phone, so I think you have to hit *6 to unmute yourself. Does that work? Perhaps not. Okay, well, maybe you and I can chat later. We have, if you pop in later, that's fine too, Susan. The second award honoree is also an on-site coordinator for her clinic's Reach Out and Read program. And her colleagues say there is absolutely no one more deserving, they think, to win this award because of her excitement, enthusiasm for Reach Out and Read, and how she has created greater enthusiasm within her clinic for Reach Out and Read. This clinic also happens to be a residency clinic, and most residency clinics, it's kind of like herding cats. So the fact that these two coordinators have done so much to help create cohesive training and environments within their clinic is a huge testament to their impact. This person has, this clinic has also been a program since a long-standing program also. Due to this coordinator's follow-up with providers, she makes sure to keep them trained and then helps with the residents with their training every year, which is a huge task because these clinics have enormous turnovers every year. She develops and implements innovative systems and figured out a new book tracking system that increased the clinic's book distribution rate 25% in just 1 year. She takes her passion for Reach Out and Read and the work her clinic does outside of her clinic. So it's just not what's going on in terms of the support for the families in her clinic, but she's advocating for the work that Reach Out and Read does throughout the clinic system, including committees that she serves on, such as a prenatal group and an employee resource group. She inspires the clinicians and other staff within her clinic all the time. We're happy to present the second Reach Out and Read Wisconsin Excellence Award to Shay Daniels Pullman of the Access Wingra Family Medical Center. Yay! Thank you for all you do, both of you. You inspire us daily, as well as coordinators throughout the state. Shay, are you with us and just want to say hi?
Hi!
There she is in the clinic, masked. Congratulations, Shay.
Thank you.
Your team loves you and all that you do to support them in their work supporting families.
I am speechless, which is something that doesn't happen very often. But I truly enjoy the program and making sure that our kiddos know from 2 months to the time that they're 5. I like to say we're their first library. And just making sure that parents know and everybody knows how important it is to start off young. And my favorite story to share is one of the providers has a family, and I've watched this mom go from being pregnant to the kiddo actually being born, and now he's 3. He had some challenges at first just with, language and all of that. And the last time I saw him wasn't, never has been a very talkative young kiddo. But I was getting ready to leave out the room, and I was like, good to see you. We'll see you later. And he stood up and he was like, wait a minute, where's my book? And I was just like, all righty then. Don't worry, your book is coming. But that is what I live for, and that is why I think this is such an important program to continue, and I truly thank you from the bottom of my heart.
Well, we thank you. You are a model for what we all inspires us, and we aspire to. Thanks so much for breaking into your day today, and say hi to everyone else in the clinic. And when you get the award, show it off.
I sure will. Thank you.
Alex, do we have any other wrap up things
I don't
to do?
think so. Everyone will be getting a survey to their email probably right at 12:30. So if you could take that, it's pretty short, but we really do look at all those comments and all that feedback as it helps us improve and then think about what we want to do for next year. And if you have any ideas or things like that, you can always reach out to any of us on the team. Our contact information is on the last page of the conference program, and we would love to hear it. So just thank you everyone for taking the time today. We really appreciate all that you do.
It's been so much fun today. I look forward to a meeting soon where I can give everybody a hug. Oh, good. We're saying it, everybody. Thanks so much for spending your
Thank
morning
you.
with us.
Have a great rest of your day.
Thank you to our speakers.